One more. Does anybody want one? All right, so I missed introductions. My name is Carrie Bett. I'm the principal at the high school. I've been there for 8 or something years.
She's our veteran administrator.
But I've been teaching there since it opened in '99. So I've seen a ton of change in the school since we've been open. Just a little. You had mentioned consolidation at the beginning. I think I can speak for high school for sure, and I would say probably for the middle school when Sean gets here. Consolidation has certainly served financially the district well, but I think for somebody who's at the high school and used to receive kids from 3 different schools at 3 different places and all that, that transition used to be very, very difficult, and it's the educational process has very, very benefited from consolidation, both as a district, but also from the middle school perspective. So Sean and I work very, very closely together, and our staffs do, in terms of making sure that kids move from the middle school to the high school much more seamlessly than they used to do. So I'll just give you a little bit of background on that. Okay, so I'll try and make sure that I'm as clear as possible in terms of the yes, I think that's right. Sorry. All of a sudden I was looking at something. I was like, I don't know, is that true? So our enrollment as of October 1, it says 225, but it should say October 1st, is 473. And I will just tell you that is the lowest it's been since I've worked in the building. Some of that has to do with tuition. When we opened, we had a ton of kids tuition to our school from Raymond. Raymond was a school choice district, its own individual district, and we probably had served 20 or 30 kids from the town of Raymond. We're down to 2, so those 2 tuition students that Stacy talked about, Tina talked about, are 2 Raymond students. Raymond still has choice, but it's consolidated with Wyndham, so they don't really have choice because Wyndham, I think all of those towns really try and encourage them to go to Wyndham High School, and transportation is no longer provided. We used to provide transportation. There's a number of other factors about why that number is the way that it is. I think we have 6 students who are in charter schools right now, and it's the virtual charter schools that came online this year that made the biggest difference. 4 of them are enrolled in the virtual charter schools. 2 of them are 9th graders that we never met. We don't know anything about them from the high school perspective. They were students who were in the district. The senior class is teeny tiny. There's 108 kids in the senior class, which is very unusual. But Sean's 8th grade class is 130. So I anticipate those numbers climbing back up. I don't see this as a trend sort of going down. But we're never going to be, from what I can see going down through the grades at the 3 elementary schools, we're never going to be, I mean, at one point when I was in the classroom teaching, we were almost 600 students. But with the Raymond students gone and not a lot of growth in the 3 towns just in terms of population, I think 500 is the right number. Right now, though, that number is not encouraging to me. But I don't anticipate being that low next year, but we'll see what I say when I come to this meeting. So students have to take 6 classes. So we have an 8-period schedule. Students have 4 classes each day, so it rotates. We call it a blue day and a silver day. They have to be enrolled in 6. The vast majority of kids are enrolled in 7, so they have 1 study hall every other day. They have to earn 24 credits to graduate, so 6 times 4 gets you to 24. Each class is 78 minutes, 80-minute block each of those days, so they take 4 of those per day. Class sizes are approximately 18, but as Tina has learned, never having been a high school principal, calculating that number is extremely difficult because high schools run a lot of programs, a lot of different courses. So we run advanced placement classes that are upper level, sort of nationally normed courses. We offer it in calculus, statistics, biology, U.S. history, world history, English language arts, 2 different ELA ones, 1 language, 1 literature, and next year we're going to be adding a computer science course. Those courses can vary in terms of the number of students. But for our students to really be able to access colleges and for them to be on par with all the other kids around the country, we have to offer those courses. So we have 22 kids taking AP World History this year, which is great, but we have 6 kids in AP Biology. And those numbers will fluctuate every year. It really depends on the enrollment. It depends on the preparation of the kids. Different classes, different groups of kids have stronger or weaker sort of overall academic performance. So those are some things that we offer that we really need to have make sure that our kids get what they need. We also offer sort of a technology program in sort of the old school industrial arts. It's got a little variation on that, but you can't have 22 kids in a room with saws and things going, right? So those tend to be a little bit smaller for safety reasons. We also offer, Donnie Hodgkins is one of our technology teachers. We offer a TV studio, which has a number from digital photography to multimedia TV. So those courses can range from 12 to 20. So it really is this huge variety of classes. So part of that is just making sure we offer a full program, and that means that those class sizes can really get funky sometimes. It's really hard to plug it up. I mean, to sort of make it simple like it is at the elementary level. It's so simple at the elementary. Each grade has so many teachers and so many kids. We have one principal, we have an assistant principal, Patrick Flynn, and then Don King is the co-curricular director, and he mostly works for the high school, but he covers the middle school as well, so he has shared administrative staff. Total number of teachers, so we have 35 full-time classroom teachers, and I noticed when Rick did his art, music, those guys are considered specialists. I think at the high school everybody's a specialist because you're either a math teacher or an English teacher or a science teacher. I think the general teachers at the elementary level, that's not sort of how it works. At the high school level, you have to be an expert in what you're teaching. So the art teachers and all those, they're included in that. 3 of those staff are shared. Both music teachers also serve the middle school. And we have one teacher who's also the ELL teacher who serves students in the district who are English language learners, students whose first language is not English. We have 8 special ed teachers. We also run a functional life skills program that the middle school does not have. The middle school kids who are in functional life skills are served down at Pullman Community School, so they sort of jump over Whittier to get to us, just in terms of space and size and those kinds of things. We have 3 guidance counselors. We have 1 special ed social worker. We have the 3 guidance counselors. So again, remembering the high school, a lot of their work is getting kids into post-secondary programs, whether that be community college, 4-year college, those kinds of things. We have one teacher who's sort of a part-time teacher, part-time literacy coach, part-time RTI coordinator. RTI is a program that we use to identify students who are struggling to pass their classes. They're not in special ed, but they're having a hard time sort of getting through their courses and doing well, so that person helps to make some plans for those kids. Lots of meetings with teachers and with parents to help students get through. And then our librarian is shared between Sean and I, between the middle school and the high school, with one library in the whole complex, and Julie Purdy serves both groups. We have 13 special ed techs. 2 of those positions are unfilled. They've been unfilled all year long. We're about to add a 3rd one that's unfilled. We're just having a hard time hiring and keeping ed techs. I think that's true everywhere. 3.5 additional ed techs who are regular ed. So half of that is for the library. 2 of those regular ed techs serve as tutors during the school day. We have a program called the Learning Center, where a lot of tutoring is provided to students so they can be caught up. Sometimes those tutors are used, those ed techs are used to help students who are failing, to help get them caught up. And then we have one ed tech who provides sort of some behavior intervention things when students need mediation, when students are struggling, when there's conflict between kids, sort of helping us manage and monitor just general sort of behavior stuff that's happening. 21% of our students are identified with IEPs. I took all this from the October 1 count, so there could be some variations. I think at this point, Holly, I'm going to look at you. I think at this point the high school has 5 outplacements. We brought one back, but we sent one out sort of simultaneously. Here's the big number. 43 students in the high school have a 504. I'm going to reiterate what Rick said. A 504 is used to provide support to students either with medical needs. Only 6 of those students are students with medical needs. We have a student with a severe concussion who needs additional supports. Could be diabetes, could be anything like that. But it also, the law requires you provide support for students who have mental health diagnoses that interferes with their schooling. And so 43 minus 6 is the number of students, so 37 students are students who have mental health diagnoses, and it is impacting their ability to do well in school. It may impact their ability to get in the building, or it could just be impacting their ability to just get through the day without too many issues. So that is a huge, huge jump. We have never seen that before. We are finding an increasing number of students. I think Sean would say this as well at the middle school, and I think you guys would say this at the elementary level. Increasing number of students struggling with mental health problems. So those 504 plans are all managed, with the exception of the 6 medical ones, by the guidance counselors. That's part. They have taken on that as a new duty, which has sort of become a pretty significant burden. So I just sort of wanted to make sure you had that information. We've had a number of, we've had a suicide, we've had a couple of suicide attempts, we've had a bunch of issues that have occurred. We held a mental health forum in January to try and sort of have a larger conversation around that, but that has been the theme of the year, that mental health crisis for kids is there. And 43% of the high school kids are free and reduced lunch. So that's a little bit up. That's up from where we've been in the past. Not significantly, but it's on the higher end. Okay? So just a couple other things just for you all to know, for those of you not familiar with the school. So AP is advanced placement. Those are those courses that I told you. They are nationally recognized courses. Students take an exam at the end of the course. If they do well on that exam, their college may offer them college credit for it. It depends on the college they go to, and it depends on the score they get on the exam. But it is something they can take with them that may in fact help reduce the amount of time or the number of courses they have to take. We have 54, which is an awesome number, 54 students enrolled in Lewiston Regional Technical Center, LRTC. That is the regional technical center that all the sending schools around Lewiston send their students to. So it's us, Oak Hill, Lisbon, Leavitt, Auburn, and Lewiston. All send them to Lewiston High School for that program.
Is there a cost that we must
Nope. No, it's a state-funded program. We don't have any part. I don't know how the funding works, but we don't. Every time we have that on the budget, it's zero, and everybody says great.
And those students are spending part of their time still at the high
Correct.
school.
The cost would be transportation. We do provide transportation to them, and most programs, the programs either are 2 blocks or 3 blocks a day. So some kids are there just in the morning. Some kids come back just for the last class of the day. So it really depends on the program. But it's medical assistant. It could be, welding. They're going to be adding plumbing next year, which is a really great program. Electricity. So it's a wide variety of programs, and we do a really good job of getting a lot of kids into it. So it's very, very successful. And then 20 of our kids over the course of this year will be enrolled in a college class outside of our school. So that may be at Bates College, it may be through USM, or it may be through Central Maine Community College. And so if they earn credit in those courses, they take it with them to their wherever they go after high school. And again, that's a good number. A lot of area high schools don't have that number. Our counselors do a really good job of hooking kids up with those programs.
Carrie, on
Yes.
any given day, because of the kids taking college courses in at LRTC, you could have as many as 60 or 70 kids out of the building.
That's probably a little bit high.
It's
It's a little bit high because like 20, those college classes, some of those kids it's during the day. A chunk of them, it might be a Saturday class, it might be an afternoon class. So if they're taking, like if they take a 2-hour class at CM on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they'll have a hole in their schedule for us, so they may come in late that day. So the 54 is
like
half and half. So
it's
half of those school,
25,
yeah, half of those kids are out of the building every day because the programs are every other day. They're not every day. So, but yes, we got kids doing all kinds of stuff, which is great. Okay, so administration is down 6.14%. Not really. We just moved somebody from one line to another. It's the magical, Stacy's cleaning up our budgeting and getting things correctly in the right place. And so we have an attendance secretary, administrative assistant, and a guidance secretary. The guidance secretary was in the administration line. She has now been properly moved into guidance. So it's like I lost a person, but I didn't. She's just in a different part of the budget. I think last year the budgeted amount for administrator salaries was higher than it needed to be based on how the work agreement worked out. So I think the difference is like $300. Retirement is up, and that's based on the state pushing those costs down to us that Tina already said. Neither Patrick or I have changed our benefits, so that's really nothing's different there. The support salaries changed because the secretary transferred. And last year, as part of the budget cutting process, we eliminated all conferences for the administrators, for Patrick and I. So I've put that money back in this year to try and fund some of that for us. I think it's like $2,000. This will be also probably the last year that our tuition line for administration is about $3,500. It will be reduced after this year. Patrick's been enrolled in a PhD program, and his program will be finished by the end of next year, so I anticipate being able to reduce that next year after that. Questions? Okay. Regular instruction, down by 1.82%. Regular instruction is where, all the supplies, science is an expensive thing to run in a high school. You need chemicals, you need stuff, kids need to experiment and do labs. We're updating biology books for our sophomores. Several years ago, we updated math textbooks similar to what the elementary people are going to be doing for next year. So every year, sort of those costs, they end up being about the same. We're just shifting money from one department to another depending on what their needs are. Last year, we spent a ton of money updating AP biology books. They're like $150 textbooks, those are. So we didn't need that chunk. It went to another group. So that in general doesn't change much with the exception of salary and benefits. I did have 11 babies born in the building last year. So I have a very young staff as well, similar to what Ryan was talking about. I actually was counting up. I have about 13 staff members who are making under $40,000, and those are those new people. The starting salary is $32,000, so they're all within the first couple years of their career, and they're young and they're having children. Ed tech salaries are reduced, but that's again transferring one ed tech into administration who used to be in regular ed. Benefits are up primarily because of retirement and the state shifting those costs back. And then I don't have anything to do with adult ed, but it impacts the budget. It was reduced by $32,000. The adult ed line that is tuition for 16 to 20-year-olds, that funds students who drop out and attend adult ed for their adult ed diploma, correct? Okay. So it's not an item, it's not an item that I have control over, but it's in my regular instruction lines. Okay. Alternative ed, I should have said that. So we shifted a teacher from regular ed to alternative ed. This is a new budget line that Stacy created for us that we've supposedly been needing to do that. And so we've moved the teacher who runs our DPATH program. So I'll give you a little bit of information about that. I think that program has existed since my first year as principal. There was, before consolidation, a district alternative program where students who dropped out of high school attended. It was known as Bakerstown. I think it operated out of the basement of the Poland town office. The old town office. So right around the time I became principal, that program was ended, Bakerstown was ended and was moved into the high school. So we now run an alternative program in the high school. What's great for kids in that scenario is they still access all the services that we have. So if they have a social worker on their IEP, then they still access a social worker. They still take regular classes. They can still go to LRTC. They can still do all kinds of things, but it is a smaller program. It is by application. Students are very committed to the program, and I can support. So I have one teacher who's fully devoted to that program as the coordinator, and then I can borrow teachers from each of the departments to offer classes. So a half of a teacher teaches math in DPAP, for example, and then the other half he's teaching regular ed classes. Science, there's a teacher who goes and offers science. Sometimes it's a credit recovery, so they failed freshman science, they move into DPAP, and then part of that work is sort of getting that class back to keep them on track to graduate. It is a dropout prevention program. That has been running very, very successfully for the past 8 years.
Is this
So-
kind of in lieu of the summer program?
No.
We're still going to have summer school at the middle school and high school. We've only eliminated it at the K-6 for our younger students.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
they
so-
still have some credit recovery, standards-based, a standards-based summer school program where if they're missing standards they haven't passed them, they can make them up in the summer.
Yeah. Summer school tends to be a lot of 9th graders and 10th graders. DPATH serves 10th graders through 12th graders. So sometimes they go to summer school. Sometimes the DPATH program is able to be more flexible in its scheduling and reducing sort of the amount of work to get the bare minimum so they can pass. So they use that flexibility to help kids get caught up if they're behind, if they have a terrible freshman year. For example, if we have a freshman who flunks almost everything in 9th grade, we will move them into DPATH with the hope of keeping them on track to graduate on time, sort of recovering that. A lot of times it works, sometimes it doesn't. We still have students who drop out who are in that program. So, but it is a necessary part of sort of keeping graduation rate and dropout. Graduation rate moving in the right direction up, dropout rate moving in the right direction down.
So it's something that they're doing in that program that they're not getting that type of attention or whatever curriculum in the regular classes?
Yep, so
it's more focused?
Yep, and it's a smaller group of students, and they have a home base. So there is a room with a smaller room attached, and that is their home base. So and they've got a full-time teacher. One of the special ed techs is full-time in there because about half the students who are in that program are students who have an IEP, special education. And then there are 3 or 4 other teachers who come and go during the day. So they have a home base. The most students we put in there are 30. It's usually between 25 and 30 students. So they keep a very tight community, and a lot of times that connection and relationship is the most important thing. And that if they're out in the regular education setting where they might have 6 different teachers, they get lost. They fall through the cracks. Nobody's sort of muckling onto them. Whereas in this program, they're in one place and they can have much more individualized attention. Okay. Summer school. So the only thing that is different is what Tina mentioned. We are. Well, I know. Did you?
I didn't read.
Oh, okay. So sorry. So our hope this year is to offer summer school without charge. Right now, we charge students between $75 and $150 for summer school, and we have a number of other programs that we help students get caught up that we don't charge for, and we really weren't collecting enough money. It cost us about $9,000 to run summer school. We were collecting about $3,500 depending on the year, just because a lot of families are struggling to pay that amount, and so it's sort of. I proposed that this year we just sort of stopped charging for it, and so the budget reflects a lack of revenue, which is us sending a check down to the central office from all the fees that kids have paid for summer school. I have students who owe $400 and $500 for summer school, but they've passed the classes, they're on track to graduate, they've just never paid the bill. So
we did have some discussion about that at our committee meetings, and one of our responsibilities is to provide a response to intervention, to provide students with that intervention to help them graduate, to help them pass. And so to charge kids for something that's really our responsibility as a board and as a district really seemed in conflict with each other. So that's part of the reason why we had talked about during this budget process, discussing it and making the recommendation that we no longer charge them.
And there's a long history of high schools charging for summer school. I think what's different is that the summer school has become much more targeted. Kids only have to make up the standards that they didn't meet during the school year. So it's not, it used to be summer school was you'd go for 6 weeks, sit down, and they, take whatever class they were offering and you'd call it good. So some students are only there for a week. Some students may be there for a month, but they were all paying the same amount, right? So parents would get irritated. Why is my kid done and I paid all that money? And I'm like, I'm sorry. So I think it's just become, and the more we understand, students who are struggling in school, the variety of reasons that they're struggling, it's started to feel a little punitive, when in fact some of those reasons for failures may be family dysfunction, mental health, all those other things. So, okay.
In fact, you can't collect it all either.
Right.
Yeah, right. I mean,
It sounds good to say that we charged you $3,500, but what did you collect?
yeah. So I think I have increasingly become a bill collector, to be honest with you, chasing families around their bills. And the only time I really can put any sort of weight behind it is around graduation. We tell them you can't walk if you don't pay your bill. But even then, I'm cutting deals left and right. I'm not, I'll ask if a parent can say I can give you $20. I call it good. The kid still has a bill of $300. I take the 20 and I say we'll call it good because I'm just not a debt collector. So I
Probably
think
cut that
that
off
that
public record,
was
too.
putting my position a little bit in
Yeah,
a weird
we
conflict
hide
too.
things.
But, I think you're too valuable to something else to be a bill collector, so.
Thank you. I agree.
Well, and we're putting into a few of those things going forward, so you'll
Yeah.
have much less of that next year.
Yeah. So guidance is up, and that's primarily because we moved a secretary from the administrative line to the guidance line. Nothing has changed in guidance other than, the general benefit retirement thing. Library is up 0.11. I think we added a couple of databases and some benefit stuff that went up, but it really is pretty minimal. Academics, co-curricular. So this has a new title in the budget. It used to be called co-curricular. It's now going to be called academics. Co-curricular activities are those clubs that kids can join that are related to the curriculum. So for example, drama, math team, speech and debate, where there's learning, there's a book club, there's learning going on, and it's sort of attached to the curriculum. So we offer a ton of those clubs that kids can do, and so there's a minor increase in some dues and fees and some additional supplies out of that line. And then the athletics, which is extracurricular. So that has an increase of 12.45%, but I think we're still going back and forth in terms of whether or not the lines are accurate. This is Don King is the athletic director, co-curricular director, and he really splits his responsibilities, not 50-50, but he covers the middle school and the high school. And I think his salary isn't split between the two where it has been in the past, so I'm thinking that's why that increase is there, but we'll keep sorting that out. But some things that did increase. So we don't have control over league dues, for example. So our school belongs to two different organizations around athletics. We belong to the Western Maine Conference, which are all the teams we play during the regular school year. Greeley, Yarmouth, Lake Region, those schools. And that's a conference that organizes and gets, and pays money to establish all those schedules. We also belong to the MPA, and by belonging to the MPA, we allow ourselves to participate in postseason competition. We would never be able to go to states if we didn't belong to the MPA. And we've done that in basketball, cheering, a bunch of other things. So those are the dues. So this year, 2 years ago, the MPA dues went up. This year, the Western Maine Conference League dues are going up. Officials, we spend a pretty significant chunk of money on officials for games. Mileage, the reimbursement for mileage is going up. That is sort of given to us by the Officials League in connection with the MPA. We're not contracting individually with officials. We get assigned officials, and then we have to pay them. The school board approved sort of starting to work on girls lacrosse in a cooperative with Granny Gloucester. This year, the kids will be participating without us paying anything. Next year, we would like to begin to add some transportation to allow the girls to play with Granny Gloucester without having to transport themselves all the time, which is what they'll do this year. So for those of you who are new, we collect participation fees every year, and that allows us to reduce the supply line in athletics by $5,000 every year. So the real cost of the supply line, we've sort of make sure that we have that on paper, but what you'll see in the budget is always with $5,000 taken off. So I think it's $19,000 versus $14,000. So the budget will say $14,000. The true cost is $19,000. $5,000 of that's going to be paid by the participation fees. And I think that's it. Then there's some proposed things, but I've got that in a separate line. So again, it's a maintenance of effort budget, the same shifts that those guys talked about, which I didn't leave on there, but you guys all get, like, things have moved. So, but nothing in that maintenance of effort is really a major change. So there are going to be some proposals that we'll talk about, and Holly's going to spend more time on some of this. So Tina talked about at the beginning adding a special education teacher and the halftime social worker. Really, this is to address the programming issues at the high school and in some cases the middle school in terms of students who have pretty significant behavioral needs. So these students, they may have intellectual needs as well, but the behavior prevents them from being successful in the mainstream courses. Right now we have a program that has 16 students in it, which is a very large class for students whose main challenge is keeping themselves regulated and on track for each day of school. It has become, we placed one student out this year because the program was so large, there was just no way for us to work with that student individually to help that student maintain control during the day. So it has sort of gotten to a point where we can't operate the program successfully and really provide the services that kids need without splitting it. So the goal is to split the program in half, add a teacher so that we can do 9th and 10th grade in one group and 11th and 12th grade in another. That will also require increasing social work services. Right now we have one full-time social worker who works with all the students who have special ed needs, who have social work services, which right now is about 58 students. 16 of those are in the behavior program, and those students require sort of ongoing throughout the day assistance. When they struggle to maintain control in the classroom, they work with a social worker who tries to work with them to help them go back to the classroom. And the social worker oftentimes is not available because he's running groups of students from other programs throughout the day. So sometimes that student will be out of the class for an hour simply because the social worker is not available. And we do that because the goal is to not suspend them. The goal is because if they can't sort themselves out, they land with Patrick and I, and oftentimes our only option at that point is to suspend them because they're not able to control themselves, which we try to do very, very little of. So our hope is that we can sort of get a better control over this population of students and offer better services, with the hope eventually of not having so many students outplaced between the middle school and the high school, which is a big challenge right now. Also suggesting that we add 2 athletic stipends, one for girls JV ice hockey. The board approved adding that program last year. This year students self-funded that at the tune of about $1,000 a student. Dawn did a lot of great fundraising, was able to get it down to $500, but we cooperate with Leavitt and Edward Little. So the 3 schools offer a cooperative. So we now need to offer some kind of cash to that cooperative because right now they're carrying us a little bit other than what the families pay. And then unified basketball, this is our 2nd year of offering unified basketball, and that coach has been being paid from the grant. The grant is going to run out, so we need to offer a stipend for that next year. And that has been one of the best things we've ever done, and I would say most schools around the state would agree that it's been a tremendous opportunity for students. And then finally, just some small stipends for 2 co-curricular clubs, Bates Girls Group and the Book Club. Both of them operate now, and the teachers do so without a stipend, and Dawn feels like it's time. They've been doing it long enough that it's appropriate to offer those stipends. They've been very successful, highly functioning programs, clubs.
I would
Yes,
just add,
Mary.
in terms of the social worker, that was also a need that we recognized last year. And when it came down to prioritizing it, and Carrie supported it, was that we put the funds towards the elementary guidance, because the feeling that if you can support students when they're younger, that it's going to help at the high school level. But it really is a need that's been recognized for a while.
And actually, Holly had money 2 years ago to hire a halftime social worker, but like Ryan at Elm Street School, we could not fill it.
Contract.
So we have been trying to figure this out, and so this sort of feels like our best shot to sort of get it straightened out so it's not so challenging. I'm having a hard time keeping teachers in the program because it's so stressful. This year I had to involuntarily transfer a teacher into that program because I couldn't hire anybody, and the teacher who used to run the program transferred out. It's just not possible to keep going the way we're going. I keep using bodies up, using the adults up. They're stressed. It's a very stressful job to have in terms of all the possible programs that they could be doing in the high school. Did you have a question, Jack?
I did. having room at the high school also an issue with wanting the additional
So, yes.
special ed
So
teachers?
this whole thing, what I said to John Hawley was, I have a plan to cannibalize further the high school if we don't get the portable, but it will require the portable and or significant renovations and killing other spaces in the high school to add this program. I don't have another classroom unless we can move something from the middle school out to another portable and sort of buy back a classroom space in the complex. Or taking out walls and chopping stuff up and killing other spaces. So those are really the two choices. So thank you for reminding me of that.
The participation fees for the sports program, is that a set amount for every?
It's $25 per, and it's only for sports. $25 per sport for a total family. Dawn knows that better. I think the total family might be 75, something like that. So it's 25 per kid, but no family has to pay more than, like if you have 2 kids in 3 sports, it's not going to cost you all, there's a cap to it. Yeah. And there's a rate for free and reduced, and Dawn and I got to say, similar to the fee that parents pay for the technology use, so we're collecting a lot of fees, waive them frequently for families we know that can't.
And the school board supported doing away with fees for co-curricular pending budget process goes
Did they
through.
actually vote on it?
No. It was on.
It was supposed to be
the
February.
meeting that
Oh,
we-
yes, we
That's
canceled the
why I
meeting.
didn't say anything.
Okay.
I didn't say
We have
anything because
it.
they hadn't actually voted yet.
So, yeah, the Ed Committee agreed to send that to the full board for consideration for the same reason. We were talking about Carrie being a debt collector. It takes a lot of time, and just is that how we want our staff spending time? And it is a small amount of money overall. The impact on the budget is
Well, and
about
just
$5,000.
the ethical question of whether or not it's ethical to charge. We don't charge kids for speech and debate, and yet they are transporting regularly. We don't charge kids for participating in a play, but there's a cost associated with that as well. So it just became, for me, it's an ethical dilemma. It was there for a good reason. We had a lot of budget issues, but it feels like a good time to rethink that and decide whether or not it's really what we think is right.
So that will be on the agenda for the next board meeting.
I think an important thing too, that the school committee and even the budget committee as a whole, we really got to emphasize to the community the huge change in education and the way we do it. Just a special ed in the last 7, 8, 9 years has changed so much in what we have to give and the issues that kids are coming to school with that we have to take care of. And it's a huge change, and I think oftentimes the community doesn't understand that.
And Norm and I were talking during the break just about this issue. It's the right thing to do because we want our special ed students to be productive, contributing members of society, having jobs and paying taxes and owning, or at least renting a place to live. So by making sure they're getting their needs met when they're younger, is preparing them for what they're going to provide to the community later on in terms of whether they're going to be productive members of our society or not. And we know they're going to live next door to us and down the street. So we really want to be a proficiency-based system. We want to make sure we're meeting students' needs and they're leaving our schools with the skills we think they need to be successful. So.
Yeah, it's the issue of how many issues these kids are coming to school with we never saw before.
Absolutely.
I think we really need to do a better job educating the community.
These are truly unrecognized costs in other areas.
Yes.
It's the pay me now, pay me later philosophy.
Yes.
If you don't address it at a younger age, they will carry it into their adult life. They won't be productive. They'll be on social services. They'll be collecting in some other way that we'll have to fund.
Right.
We can't solve every person's problem. There are going to always be people that we have to take care of because of whatever those issues are. But
And that's why we put our priority towards the guidance counselor at the elementary school last year with the idea that we would come back this year because what Carrie and Sean are seeing at the middle school, high school is kids with needs that have just grown to an extent that they're totally crippling a child's ability to participate in education. Whereas if we started in first grade or second grade when trauma happens, or when they start kind of to face issues that are causing them to be in crisis, it's not embedded itself for 6 or 7 years. And so certainly part of our goal is to get to them early. Okay, it's lunchtime, so we're going to take a break now.